Yes, Kenya. Tamu sana, tamu sana, tamu sana, yes. The center can no longer hold in order. Things are clearly falling apart in Kenya Kwanza government. On Saturday, William Ruto held Kenya Kwanza PG meeting at State House Nairobi, where he instructed Kenya Kwanza elected leaders to mobilize goons to counter Azimio's mass action on Wednesday. And besides that, it's also emerging that senior police officers have rejected Professor Kithure Kindiki's order to shoot innocent demonstrators. Listen to Azimio's statement before we proceed.
For the first time in the history of this country, we are being made to understand that State House has sanctioned the enlisting of militia against the people. Because that's exactly what happened in State House on Saturday morning, and is exactly what was followed by a statement which was issued by Kenya Kwanza. So we are standing here before you very concerned that the country or the leadership which is currently in place can take such a direction. But let me say this, first and foremost, that we are here to confirm that the peaceful protests are planned for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week are on, as earlier declared by our leaders.
Thank you very much. Just two things to add on to that statement, that we have received intelligence that in fact senior police officers in the Kenyan Police Command have chosen to ignore the illegal directive that was given by CS Kindiki for police officers to shoot protesters. And that is the reason why the president convened a PG, because he knows the police will not do his dirty work. He has now told his own members of parliament to mobilize people in their constituencies to come and harm protesters. We want to say here to those of you who might be mobilized to come and fight your fellow Kenyans, we are not the enemy. We are not the ones who have added taxation on fuel. All these members of parliament here voted against that bill. You cannot come and fight your fellow hustlers in the streets. You cannot come from Madare and think that you are better than the person who comes from Kasarani. If Kenyans are sleeping hungry because of the price of food, the hustlers are sleeping hungry, and members of Azimio are also sleeping hungry. For a president to convene a meeting where he sets his own people against each other, I think we have never come to such a law in this country, and we must condemn it in the strongest words possible. I want the people of Azimio to know we have won the argument. By the time you hear a professor of law like Kindiki saying he no longer wants to hear English or Swahili or constitutional concepts, it means we have won the argument. They have no answer to the questions that Kenyans are asking them. That is why a professor, somebody who should be encouraging discourse, constitutional discourse, and encouraging the development of law, would get to a point and he says, sasa hii kizungu imekuwa mingi, wajuaji Nairobi wamekuwa wengi, sasa tupige hao risasi. It means we have won the argument and they have no answers. Finally, we will not fight our fellow countrymen. I want to make it very clear. In Nairobi we live as a community. Kikuyu, Luya, Jaluo, kila mtu hapa. Saile Jaluo analala njaa, Muluya analala njaa, Mkikuyu analala njaa. We will not fight our fellow countrymen.
That's the current state of affairs in William Ruto's government. A government organizing goons to counter opposition's demonstrations. A government giving orders to the police to use live ammunition on peaceful protesters. And it's actually a good news that some senior police officers have rejected that order. So that exposes that big split in William Ruto's government. And besides the senior police officers rejecting that order, we are also meant to understand that NIS also want William Ruto to go slow. There is a lot of tension on the ground. He has no option but to reach out to Azimio, to Raila Odinga. In this video, I want us to dig deep into this new revelation for Kenyans to understand what this means politically and portends for William Ruto's rule. If you are watching us but you have not yet subscribed, subscribe, give this video a like. Let's continue. Let me start by saying this. If Ruto's government does not change its strategy, I won't be wrong to say this government will not reach 2027. The only strategy Ruto's government has as of now is the police, using the police to silence critics. And that's why we are seeing Ruto vowing that there'll never be maandamano in Kenya. Same to Professor Kithure Kindiki. Listen to Rigathi talk, Moses Kuria. The only strategy they have as of now is to use the police. Excessive use of force by the police. They think that that's the only way they can solve the current political impasse in the country. And from the reliable sources, you are saying that some senior police officers are now rejecting such illegal orders. And about 2 days ago, United Nations on Human Rights also warned William Ruto's government. And the UN made it very clear that protest demonstrations, those are international rights that any government in the world cannot and should not deny its people. So the senior police officers are rejecting such illegal orders from the government because they know eventually, after everything shall have been done, they will be held individually responsible for the killings. That alone is exposing that clear divide. A government that is falling apart in just 9 months. And when a government also decides to use goons, then that's a moribund government. That's a government that has completely failed to use all the instruments of power at its disposal in making sure they uphold the rule of law. That's a clearly failing government. A government that is failing. And it's good, as Azimio is making it very clear, they'll not fight their fellow Kenyans. So you are seeing that the opposition is even more sober than the government. While in most occasions, the governments are always sober than the oppositions. But in Kenya, the opposition is more sober than the government. And that's why I've always maintained Kenyans are dealing with a very clueless criminal team. That's coming out very, very clearly. And also, if you dig deep, one thing that is coming out very clearly, William Ruto has no option but to reach out to Azimio. Azimio controls majority on the ground. And even the minority William Ruto controls, that minority is now splitting, joining hands with the opposition. So as time goes by, as life becomes more difficult for Kenyans, William Ruto is going to find it more difficult to rule. Yes, he's going to find it more difficult to rule. I listened to Professor Kithure Kindiki yesterday speak. He was saying he has not banned mandamano or demonstrations. A day before that, he had taken a vote that there will never be mandamano in Kenya. Upon United Nations giving a warning, you are seeing yesterday while speaking, he seems to be softening his stand. A cornered government. And all this confirms that as more and more Kenyans take to the streets, William Ruto is now being pushed to the wall to listen to Kenyans. And I've always maintained here that the only language a dictatorial regime understands is the language of protests and mass action. That's the only language any dictatorial government in the world understands. You can't negotiate diplomatically with a dictatorial regime. The only way you can actually make the regime listen to you is through protests and mass action. And I'm very sure if Kenyans continue pushing, then William Ruto will actually yield. He'll actually calm down. Let me stop it there, ladies and gentlemen. If you are watching us, but you have not yet subscribed, subscribe, give this video a like. To our fans and subscribers here, I'm very much humbled, very grateful for the kind of support you are giving me here. God bless you. God bless Kenya. Any other person who may want to support our forum, contact me through that number below. Let's meet in our next analysis. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Kenya.